The eyes can lie, the mind never does. There is a world that cannot be seen with open eyes, a world that whispers in silence, reveals in stillness, and unfolds only to those who are willing to see without looking. Most people live their entire lives perceiving only what lies on the surface, chasing shadows, missing the essence. They see obstacles, but never the lesson hidden inside. Why? Because they rely only on the outer eye, not the inner vision. Today, I will share with you a forbidden technique, long preserved in the sacred halls of Shaolin tradition. Not forbidden because it is dangerous, but because few are ready for it. This is a path of clarity, consciousness, and awakened perception. Not with your eyes, but with your mind. If you are ready to see beyond the invisible, let us begin. Most people believe that seeing is believing, but in the ancient Shaolin tradition, it is taught the opposite. Believing is seeing. Because what you see with your physical eyes is often incomplete, distorted, or deceived by the ever-changing world. Advertisements, opinions, body language, and even your own desires can manipulate what you perceive. The outer eyes are powerful, yes, but they are easily tricked. The true sight, the one that reveals clarity, purpose, and truth, arises only when we close the eyes deliberately and turn our gaze inward. This is not symbolic, it is literal. One of the first instructions given to a novice in the Shaolin monastery is to sit in darkness and do nothing. Not because there is nothing to do, but because stillness in darkness reveals everything. It's in the absence of distraction that we begin to notice what is always present but rarely observed. The subtle sensations in the body, the noise of the mind, the truth of our emotions, and the deep questions we avoid. When the eyes are closed, the ego has no mirror. You are no longer defined by how others see you or how you see yourself in relation to the world. Instead, you are confronted with what you feel, what you think, what you are. This is the beginning of what the Shaolin monks call the internal awakening, a state where your focus is not scattered outward but condensed inward. It is in this state that the inner vision starts to awaken. At first, it may be uncomfortable. Silence can scream louder than noise when you're not used to it. Darkness may feel suffocating when your identity is built on performance and reaction. But if you stay, if you breathe through it, you will begin to see what truly matters. You will notice the thoughts that never leave, the patterns of worry that haunt you, the longing that hides behind your ambitions. And in that seeing, you gain clarity that does not depend on external validation. Clarity that cannot be shaken by temporary chaos. Clarity that makes your actions feel aligned, precise, meaningful. Close your eyes with intention is to train your mind to see differently. In martial arts, there is a moment in sparring where the master stops watching the opponent and begins feeling them. He no longer predicts punches by sight, but by sensing shifts in energy, breath, and rhythm. This is what happens when inner vision is cultivated. You begin to see movement before it begins. You hear the emotion behind a person's words. You feel the pull of intuition nudging you away from danger or toward alignment. This kind of seeing cannot be taught in textbooks. It is learned through stillness, repetition, and awareness. It requires a willingness to disconnect from the world long enough to reconnect with your essence. So ask yourself, when was the last time you sat quietly, closed your eyes, and simply listened? Not to music, not to podcasts, not to the world, but to your own breath, your heartbeat, your thoughts as they rise and fall like waves. This is the first forbidden technique, not because it's dangerous, but because it's neglected. Most avoid it because it reveals too much. But those who are brave enough to see with their eyes closed begin to understand. The most important vision is not what lies ahead, but what lies within. The Shaolin path begins not with movement, but with stillness. Not with more, but with less. And in that sacred silence, something begins to awaken. Now let us explore what happens next, when stillness becomes your gateway, and silence becomes your greatest teacher. In the ancient Shaolin way, one of the most paradoxical teachings is this: to move forward, you must first become still. This may seem counterintuitive in a world that glorifies hustle and noise, but the monk knows what the world forgets. Stillness is not the absence of action. It is the presence of clarity. When the mind is constantly reacting, chasing, adjusting to external chaos, it becomes like muddy water. But the moment you let that water settle, slowly and silently, the mud sinks, the chaos clears, and what lies beneath becomes visible. This is how inner sight is trained, not through more input, but through less disturbance. In stillness, perception sharpens. You stop hearing only the words people speak and start feeling their energy. You begin recognizing the invisible threads connecting your thoughts, your behavior, and your reality. In Shaolin temples, young disciples are not immediately taught to fight or leap or strike. They are first taught to sit, to be still for hours, to watch their breath, to observe the movement of their thoughts without moving. To some, this may seem unproductive, but what is truly being trained is the mind's stability, a deep inner silence that anchors the spirit no matter what happens outside. This stability becomes a powerful tool. With it, your mind no longer jumps at every thought. You begin to witness without becoming entangled. You learn to respond, not react. And this subtle shift changes everything, for in that silence, patterns become visible. Emotions you once ignored rise to the surface. Intuition begins to whisper, the truth begins to speak. But the practice of stillness is not easy. The ego resists it. The modern mind, conditioned by constant stimulation, finds it unbearable. It will say, this is boring, or this is a waste of time. But beneath that resistance is exactly what must be faced. Fear, discomfort, a perception that opens not in the eyes but in the heart. This is why stillness is revered in the Shaolin path, because from stillness, a different type of vision awakens. Not the kind that observes the world through judgments, but the kind that perceives life through presence. You see the reality behind appearances. You sense the shift in a room before anyone speaks. You begin to trust the quiet voice within. In stillness, you don't just find peace, you find precision. Like a sword held perfectly still before the strike, your awareness becomes focused, disciplined, and sharp. This is the foundation upon which inner vision is built. It is the ground upon which wisdom walks. From here, the journey deepens. Not through thought, but through breath. Not by seeking more answers, but by listening more deeply. And this listening leads us to the next gateway, where the breath becomes the lens through which perception transforms. Among all the tools the Shaolin masters have passed down through generations, one stands at the heart of all inner transformation, the breath. Simple, invisible, ever presented, yet it holds the power to unlock perception far beyond the ordinary. In our modern lives, breathing is unconscious, shallow, mechanical. But in Shaolin tradition, breath is sacred. It is not merely a function of survival, it is a vehicle of awareness, energy, and vision. When you begin to breathe with intention, something extraordinary occurs. Your inner world begins to stabilize, and your outer world starts to reveal its hidden patterns. Just as a camera cannot focus without adjusting its lens, your mind cannot see clearly unless your breath is calm, deep, and rhythmically aligned. The breath becomes your lens, not for the outer eye, but for the inner one. And through this lens, the invisible begins to take form. In Qigong, we learn that each breath is a message, and how you breathe reflects how you live. A shallow, rapid breath often signals anxiety or distraction. A slow, anchored breath mirrors a composed and centered state of being. When you consciously inhale and exhale, you are not just drawing air. This alignment between breath and awareness is what opens the door to higher perception. You begin to notice the subtle energy in your body, the shift in your emotional states, the sensation of thoughts before they even become words. Breath brings you back to your body, your truth, your essence. It is the bridge between your conscious mind and your subconscious wisdom. Through breath, the fog of confusion lifts and a deeper clarity emerges, not from thought, but from still knowing. The monks teach a foundational breath. Inhale slowly for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6 to 8 counts. This rhythm trains the nervous system to relax and the mind to open. Over time, you no longer breathe just for oxygen. You breathe to observe, to feel, to see. The more refined your breath, the more refined your perception. In this state, you may begin to feel another person's emotional state before they speak, or sense when a decision is aligned or misaligned, without needing external proof. This is not guesswork, it is energetic discernment. And it begins with the breath. It is said in the teachings, when the breath wanders, the mind is unsteady. But when the breath is still, the mind too becomes still. Breath is also the medium through which you connect to something beyond yourself. Call it the Tao, the life force, the divine current. As your breath deepens, your sense of separation fades. You become aware not only of your own inner movements, but also of the energy surrounding you. A monk walking through the forest does not rely on sight alone. He feels the shift in wind, the tension in the air, the breath of nature synchronizing with his own. This harmony allows him to walk silently, see clearly, and act precisely. You too can access this state, not through ambition, but through discipline of breath. Because the one who breathes with awareness moves through the world with unshakable presence. So we begin to realize that seeing beyond the invisible requires no special vision, only a deeper connection to the present moment. And there is no path to the present more direct than the breath. Now that this lens has been revealed and cleared, let us turn our attention to a different kind of vision, not born from the eyes, but from something far deeper. The focused attention of the awakened mind, the third eye, is not mystical, it is trained. And its training begins now. In many traditions, the concept of the third eye is shrouded in mystery. It is spoken of as a supernatural portal, an esoteric gift only granted to the enlightened few. But in the Shaolin path, we strip away the myth and go directly to its essence. The third eye is not mystical. It is attention purified and sharpened to the finest edge. It is not something you are born with, it is something you trained. Just as a blade becomes sharp through repeated grinding, your attention becomes precise through repeated practice. Attention is the gateway through which your inner vision expands. It is the sacred discipline of presence without distraction. When your mind can hold focus without fleeing into the past or the future, what remains is a quality of seeing that is deeper than intellect and more accurate than analysis. It is perception in its purest form. What most people call the third eye is in truth the capacity to observe reality as it is, without projection, without reaction, without ego. The monk learns that when the mind is scattered, attention leaks. Like a leaking vessel, no matter how much knowledge or insight you pour in, it is lost without the ability to sustain focus. But when your attention is anchored, your perception becomes like a laser, cutting through layers of illusion, habits, and unconscious conditioning. In this state, you begin to notice what others miss, not because you are superior, but because you are present. The slight hesitation in a voice, the unspoken tension in a room, the feeling that something isn't right. This becomes visible to you. This clarity has nothing to do with magic. It has everything to do with undivided awareness. The Shaolin monk trains his attention the way a warrior trains his body, with repetition, with devotion, with humility. He learns to hold attention like a flame, steady, unwavering. Whether he is sweeping the floor, preparing tea, or standing guard in silence, each moment is an opportunity to cultivate this sacred discipline. And over time, the third eye awakens, not in the forehead but in the depths of the mind. It is the eye that watches thoughts come and go without chasing them. It is the eye that sees emotions rise and fall without being controlled by them. It is the eye that recognizes the impermanence of all things and yet moves through life with graceful precision. This is not an ability reserved for monks. Every human being has this potential. But it is rarely developed because it requires the one thing our world resists most: silence and sustained focus. In modern life, attention is a currency. It is bought, sold, and stolen by devices, by noise, by demands that scatter our presence across 1,000 meaningless moments. But the Shaolin path is a reclamation of that attention. When you reclaim your focus, you reclaim your power. The ability to hold a single thought, to remain with a single breath, to listen to another without drifting away. These are no longer common skills, they are forms of mastery. And when attention becomes mastery, the third eye opens, not with a flash, But with a slow and steady unveiling, you begin to see how your thoughts shape your actions, how your inner dialogue creates your outer life, how your unexamined beliefs paint the world around you. This is the beginning of true sight, and it is born not from effort alone, but from the consistent return to this moment. So train your attention, not by force but by devotion. Notice when it wanders and gently return it. With each return, you strengthen your vision. With each moment of presence, you polish the lens of perception. Over time, the inner fog lifts and the path becomes clear. And just beyond that clarity lies a deeper knowing. A vision, not with the eyes, but with the spirit, where awareness becomes wisdom and perception becomes silent power. When the inner eyes have been trained, when stillness has calmed the chaos, when breath has aligned awareness, and when attention has become steady, something sacred begins to unfold. You begin to see not with the eyes but with the spirit. This is the final transformation. The shift from sensory perception to spiritual perception. From seeing surfaces to perceiving depth. From reacting to life to moving in rhythm with it. The Shaolin master does not need to predict the future or read minds. He simply walks with the vision, rooted in presence so deep that the invisible reveals itself naturally. He does not look for signs, he becomes the sign. He does not chase clarity, he embodies it. When the spirit sees, there is no confusion. Perception is no longer filtered through the ego or distorted by fear. This kind of seeing comes with great stillness of being. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, it does not announce itself. It is a quiet knowing that emerges from the core of your awareness. A monk can sit under a tree for hours without speaking and see more about the world than someone who has traveled the globe. Why? Because he has learned to see with his inner being. He feels the subtle pull of nature. He understands the rise and fall of thoughts. He recognizes the patterns repeating in people's behavior. Not by analysis, but through pure presence. When your spirit sees, you no longer view life as random. You begin to see the unseen threads, how a past wound shaped a present reaction, how a quiet intuition is guiding you toward a choice, how each moment contains a hidden lesson. And this awareness does not come from effort, it comes from openness. You are no longer trying to control what you see. You are allowing yourself to receive what is already there. In this state, you develop what some may call wisdom, others call intuition, but in Shaolin it is simply called clarity of being. You become deeply attuned, not only to your own internal movements, but to the energies around you. You sense when a path is right, even if it defies logic. You sight in allowance. Far beyond intellect, it is spiritual discernment, and it is the fruit of the practice. Not a destination to reach, but a state to embody. You are no longer looking through your eyes, you are looking from your center, and from this center there is no fear of the unknown. And the unknown becomes a space of exploration, not threat. You are no longer imprisoned by appearances. To see with the spirit is to live without resistance. It is to accept what is while clearly recognizing what must change. It is to love without losing clarity. It is to suffer without becoming bitter. It is to walk through life as both participant and observer, rooted and fluid, aware yet free. This is the Shaolin way, not merely for Swalmo-spies, but a lived experience. It is why the monk smiles without reason, acts without hesitation, and stands calm in the storm, because he no longer sees with the eyes that judge, compare, or fear. He sees with the spirit that embraces, understands, and moves with life. And it is here, when your perception no longer depends on sight, that you begin to unlock the deepest form of vision. The vision that transforms not only how you see the world, but how you move within it. Now that you have touched this way of seeing, the question is no longer, can I see what others cannot? The true question becomes, am I still enough to listen to what has always been visible, yet always ignored? And in that question begins the quiet practice of mastery. Let us now bring all these teachings into one still moment of reflection, where insight turns into inner challenge and vision becomes the guide for your daily path. And so we return to the beginning, not the start of the speech, but the beginning of sight. The kind of sight that is not dependent on light, but on awareness. You have now been shown the silent path of the Shaolin, how to close your eyes to truly see, how stillness becomes the gateway, how the breath becomes your lens, how these are not just teachings to be remembered, they are disciplines to be lived. And the beauty is, you don't need to climb a mountain or enter a monastery to begin. You only need to pause, to sit with yourself, to return to your breath, to choose silence over noise, to observe rather than react. Remember, vision is not a gift reserved for the few. It is the responsibility of the one who seeks to live consciously. The invisible world is always speaking. The question is, are you listening with your spirit or only looking with your eyes? The choice to awaken your inner vision is not an event. It is a daily devotion, a sacred return to presence. As the Zen saying goes, when the eye is unobstructed, the result is insight. When the mind is unobstructed, the result is wisdom. Start today, not by trying to see more, but by becoming still enough to see what has always been there. Thank you for walking this journey with me. I honor the still warrior in you, the one who dares to close the eyes, calm the mind, and open the spirit. May your inner vision guide your outer steps. Until next time, be mindful, be still, and see deeply.